Now, this might come to a massive shock for my fellow pre-owned huntered brethren out there, but I looked up Hyakkimaru up and down, around, messed with his pieces a little bit, and I could not see any of the defects that Amiami stated that were on this figure. Specifically, why he was rated as a C grade was because of his box, which is a little rough, don't get me wrong, and that his swords were broken. I looked around, I kind of like messed around with them. Not only were the attachment ends in perfect condition, but I could not see any chips on the edges, no chips on the hilt. The handle, his katana that's on his hip is fine. The blades in his arms are fine. The only thing I could see was there looked like a little degradation on the end of one of his blades, but I can't tell whether that is intentional, because, you know, the whole thing with Hyakkimaru is that he's a battle-worn, practically a doll, who is also human. But I digress. The end of one of his blades looks broken and it looks weathered, but it kind of looks like it's meant to look that way. I don't own a brand new Hyakkimaru scale figure, so I'm not the greatest judge of that. I'm gonna leave people in the comment section to say whether or not Amiami just dropped the ball on this assessment of this figure. But other than, the only thing I can notice from him is that under his chin, he does have a little blemish from a possible paint transfer from when the first owner was moving his arm towards his mouth, which is the primary pose for him. But I kind of went into that knowing that that was inevitably going to happen. It happens with some of these figures that have pieces that connect really close to other pieces of their figure. And there's also a good amount of dust, a good amount of dirt from before he was repackaged, which is also expected on a pre-owned figure. But I feel like this would be closer to a B versus a C, because pretty much the figure is completely intact. I would say I paid $120, but I wouldn't be surprised that someone could resell this figure at around $250, because again, like nothing important on this figure is broken. I can reiterate, you can clean it up and it will be perfectly fine, which kind of proves my point about Amiami grading scales too, about how they're very strict and very subjective, I mean. I feel like if you can save yourself a couple $100 on getting a C grade, sometimes it's worth the risk, because look at this. I mean, you could probably see it in the B-roll, but he is as close to perfect as a pre-owned can be. And this is a C grade figure. Let me reiterate, this is a C grade figure from Amiami pre-owned, but it could compete with some of the pre-owns I've gotten from A. I mean, for anyone who's seen my Okita Alter video, that was an A rank figure, and she broke on arrival. So the fact that this Hyakkimaru is 100% intact and has all of his pieces, all his instructions, and the only issues is that he's a little dirty and he's in a box that's less than pristine, I feel like I can kind of say that there isn't much fear. You shouldn't have too much fear when it comes to ordering something that's C grade. You could probably, if you're a scratch and dent lover like me, you could probably be getting a massive, awesome deal. I think C grades get too much of a bad rap when Amiami does a very good job with, usually does a very good job with giving you the brass tacks about what's happening with this figure. But yeah, let me move on from my assessment of how off the grading scale for this figure is and get into the figure itself. I know why. Now that I'm seeing this figure in person, I understand why it's so highly prized in the aftermarket. Because I feel like this is the closest to a perfect sculpt of an anime character I have ever seen. The attention to detail on this figure is crazy. He is just like in a class of his own. Good Small Company was really cooking on this figure. Down from his face, his very beautiful face. Definitely this is after he killed one of the demons to regain his face parts. But he is great. He looks fantastic. I love that he's still got some of his doll parts, his prosthetics, but you can also see he still has a couple of his human parts. You can see his right leg. His right leg is human, while his left leg is a prosthetic, which is it's very story related. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I feel like Dororo is an anime that's best experienced blind. So I'm not going to go too deep into his character lore. But he looks so good. His dual katanas that are hidden within his arms. You can see the arm that he's kind of like bringing to his lips, slowly taking it off. You can see the blade kind of sliding out of that arm sheath. What a great detail. His bangs are also very well sculpted as well. There's very few seam lines. Honestly, the bang, what I like about the bang is that it's almost seamless. You can almost not tell that there's a seam. But I feel like with the amount of detail that you're getting, especially in the robes, I really don't mind it. I really do love this figure. I think one of my favorite parts is that you might be wondering how he brings his arm to his mouth. It's because he still has joint articulation. It's very minimal. It's not as much as a Figma, but you can ever so slightly move his joint by his elbow, which allows you to raise his arm up or down, which is fantastic. I mean, the rest of the figure does not have articulation. That's literally the only part of him that has articulation, but it's great. I love it. It really helps to minimize the potential for doing paint transfer onto his face by lowering his arm just enough so that you can attach his prosthetic into his blade shaft and then bring it back to his mouth when it's all said and done. I feel incredibly lucky on this figure. I would not expect to get a figure of this quality at the price I paid. I really do feel like I ran away. I really stole the bag on this one. I don't see myself getting this lucky in the future. On future C grades I'll inevitably buy. But I'm very happy to say that this C grade is indeed worth the money. If you ever have the opportunity to grab a C grade Hyakkimaru off the Amiami pre-owned section, I definitely would do it. I would hate to pay $350, $400, even $500 for an almost brand new Hyakkimaru when another person can find this figure for much cheaper just going through the bargain bin. And with that, that's all I have to say. I'm incredibly happy with this figure. I wish the best of luck to my fellow pre-owned hunters. And if you liked what you saw, please comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye.